and welcome to the Total Soccer Show. My name is Daryl Grove, and I'm joined by the man who always makes my selection. His name is Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
Hello. Thank you, I think.
Yeah, why not?
I don't know.
Thank you?
What's the selection for?
It's the
Is it like most overrated soccer commentators?
Best players. Best podcasters.
Okay, there we
Best
go.
podcasters to share a studio with.
All right.
How about that? So it is a USA v Brazil preview.
I think the sample size is limited on that one, but I'll take
A
it.
little bit. So the game is Friday night. It is listed as 7:30 Eastern. It's in New Jersey. It won't kick off at 7:30.
No.
We know US soccer too well by now. It's going to be 10-15 minutes after that.
Do you think? I mean, that might be generous. I might say like 8:05.
8:05?
No, I think you're right. If they say it's 7:30 kickoff, that means the pregame will be done, but it still takes a little bit of time. Yeah, you're right. You're looking at like a 7:42 or something weird.
It's going to be USA versus Brazil. On today's show, we're going to sort of try to feel out what we think Dave Sarachan's going to do with this team, but also the players we would like to see and what we'll be looking for in this game.
That sounds good to me.
But I think the fair way to do this is to think about who we're playing. Because I still stand by this. Too many times, US fans and US media just think about who's the 11 US players I want to see. Don't really think about who we're playing and why that's important.
I would agree with that in most situations. You're forgetting the obvious outlier is I want to see which 11 the U.S. is going to play, and also Neymar's there. Like, there is that element, too, of if there's that big-name opponent, the emphasis gets placed on Neymar. And I saw even on a few different previews I read, like, the writer almost apologetically say, like, Neymar is the player to watch. I know, it's the obvious pick, but it's obvious for a reason. Like, there's lots of that. So we're going to try to avoid that to the extent possible.
Well, but it is part of the Brazil Global Tour.
Yeah, let's talk about Neymar.
It has a very marketing element to it, right? And they're playing two games here in the US, right? So they're playing the US on Friday in New Jersey. And I think the following week they're playing El Salvador at Audi Field in DC.
I mean, this is kind of what Brazil does, right? Because they take that
they
show
call
on the road.
Soccer United Marketing and they say, hey, got any openings?
I mean, there's that, but like I think they've done this previously, like playing. I think they played two friendlies in Qatar before
Played
the World
in
Cup.
London.
Yeah, they do lots of these types of tours.
So star names are there, but also there's a bit of experimentation around the edges, right? Like there's no Marcelo, there's no Gabriel Jesus, but there is Neymar, and there's Roberto Firmino, and there is Coutinho, and there's Willian and Casemiro. A lot of the big names are there. We did the 11, right? This is a scary Brazil team.
Yeah. I mean, any Brazil team is scary, but this one particularly so.
So Chiche, the coach, still in charge after the World Cup. I think he's going to bring out the old 4-3-3.
I still don't fully understand how it can be both Cheech and Chichi, but it can be. So I've made my peace with that. And instead, yes, let's focus on what he's going to do. And you're right, it's probably play a 4-3-3.
We assume, right, because that's what he likes to do.
Yeah.
I mean, it's possible that he rolls the dice and does something wacky. But yeah, we think a 4-3-3. We think the central midfield will be Casemiro holding and probably Felipe Coutinho and maybe Fred from Manchester United in central midfield. And then, as I said, that front three, Liverpool's own Roberto Firmino will be the centre forward. Neymar on the left. Probably Willian on the right, maybe Douglas Costa.
Yeah, I mean, Willian would make sense given what they did this summer. Willian didn't always look as strong for Brazil at times.
He had a rough World Cup, didn't he?
Yeah, so there is always the chance that we see like Felipe Coutinho in that front three, but I think that's far less likely. I think it probably is that midfield three that you mentioned, and then maybe a little bit of experimentation. But if I had to bet, I would say Willian, Neymar, Firmino.
There we go. In goal, it looks like being Alisson because Ederson not selected. In front of him, we think the PSG pair, Thiago Silva and Marquinhos. Miranda were not selected. This is Tim Weah's teammates that he'll be up against. If he gets to play, he'll be up against his teammates Thiago Silva and Marquinhos.
And don't forget, Marquinhos played as a holding midfielder for PSG this past weekend.
Oh, interesting, yeah.
I doubt he continues that with Brazil. Then again, we may see a lot of attack from Brazil, so maybe he's in there.
Also, I believe, based on some tweets I saw from David Mossy, who works for Fox Sports, researcher. He's also on the Alexia Lalas podcast, State of the Union. Fabinho, Liverpool's midfielder, who I don't think has appeared yet.
He is not.
Looks like he'll be the fill-in right back. He's been listed as a defender, and there's no Dani Alves, there's no Fagner, there's no Danilo. So it looks like Fabinho will play right back. So lots for Liverpool fans to watch for in this game.
Yeah.
Including a reunion with Coutinho.
Well, but also, I mean, yes, there's all that. But I would say, especially so, you can see what, for lack of a better way of putting it, Fabinho's deal is. Because he hasn't featured. There have been some slightly cryptic quotes. There have been some more about getting into shape and figuring out how to play, how it will be I think Klopp has said from the beginning it will be a process in getting him to acclimate to the system. And there's speculation, is that fitness? Is that understanding of what they're trying to do? Is that where to play him entirely? I think maybe it's a combination of all three. So to see what he does for Brazil might give us good insight into what he's capable of, or maybe more importantly, what he's not capable of.
Also worth noting, there are some more experimental names on this roster, right? Like Richarlison from Everton, I think, is in line for his debut.
Said he was playing video games when he found out he got the call.
Is that right?
Yeah,
that's cute.
He didn't see it coming.
Artur, I think is how you pronounce it, the young Brazilian at Barcelona, is on this roster, and a couple of guys that I had never heard of before, who are from the domestic league.
I mean, the one I would say that also stands out for me is Andreas Pereira, the Manchester United midfielder, who I believe was born in Portugal but chose to represent Brazil. I saw him do his initiation dance. I don't believe he sang. I think Richarlison sort of sang and did the duck dance or whatever it's called. I forget how you do it.
The duck dance.
The chicken dance. There it is.
Yes.
There it is.
With a little bit of this and a little bit of that.
There we go.
Then roll it around,
What's this?
Neymar was leading it.
Okay.
So we talked before recording, right, that we think because Brazil is playing the USA and then El Salvador, is it too arrogant as a US fan to think that they'll field their strongest, most experienced team against the US, and they'll save the sort of Pereira and Artur and Richarlison's debut, for example, for the El Salvador game?
I mean, we may see them make a debut as like a late game substitute, some of these players, especially because, as we talked about yesterday, still an international friendly, so you can still have, I believe, 46 subs is the rule.
Just a six.
Maybe we'll see some of them later in the game, but I do think, yes, if they're going to play a stronger team, they probably do it against the United States, and then play the kids against El Salvador.
And based on what we've seen in terms of the way Brazil play, what should the US be ready for? I have my own thoughts of how Brazil play, but I wanted to run it past you as well.
I mean, I will see. It's actually kind of a question mark for me, because a lot of what we saw for Brazil was get the ball to Neymar, let Neymar do things. That's what we saw in the World Cup. That worked sometimes. Other times, it very much did not work.
50% of the time, it works every time.
Yeah, and we didn't see as much Firmino as a result. We saw much more
Jesus start that.
Yeah, exactly. So I will be interested to see how that front three combines, if it is that front three. That, I think, I'm not necessarily answering your question other than to say that I want to see how those front three combine, if it is just Neymar going at people, or if it is not necessarily a slow build-up, but a lot more interchange and passing a la Liverpool in that front three for Brazil.
So, and I think this is important to think about because it's what the US is facing, right? So I would argue that one thing we're almost definitely not facing is, say, a load of crosses, right? This is my memory of Brazil at the World Cup is they were not swinging the ball into the box. They were, like you said, sending it wide to, say, Neymar on the left. Then he would either dribble at people or he would draw people in and play a 1-2 or start a move. So I think you'll see Brazil with a lot of possession, sneaking a lot of numbers forward, like fullbacks will come and join the attack. You'll have late runs into the box. Doesn't Chiche love a late run into the box? Paulinho's not there. Someone else is going to be doing it.
Maybe the Casemiro late run?
That'd be a very dramatic late run. I'm saying more like Fred or Coutinho.
That makes more sense.
Maybe. So that's what the US is up against.
Yes.
I'm a little bit scared.
The other one worth remembering is that because there's no Marcelo, it probably will be Felipe Luis. Luis, while not necessarily having the attacking resume or reputation of Marcelo, if you recall, going back to our World Cup coverage, we talked a little bit about how Marcelo might be sort of a vulnerability for Brazil as much as he is a threat going forward, and that Felipe Luis at times offered more consistency down that left side. He
maybe
linked
more
up more.
Like a platform for Neymar to succeed in front
exactly,
of him.
Exactly. So it's frustrating because even though it's there's no Marcelo at least, it's oh no, there's just a much more capable defensive player who's also very capable of getting forward.
Oh, okay.
I am still sad that there's no Marcelo.
Yeah,
I just like having him around.
It's always nice to see you. Right. Okay, so before we talk about how the US team will handle Brazil, today's show is sponsored by Roughneck Scarves, official scarf providers of US soccer. So you can get lots of US men's national team scarves and US women's national team scarves through Roughneck Scarves. You can also design your own custom scarf. So we put it out on Twitter, as we love to do, and asked, if you were to design a custom scarf, custom Roughneck scarf, for this game, this USA v Brazil game in New Jersey, what would it look like? And we got some answers.
We did. I'm going to say I'm looking at them very quickly. The cursory glance I've seen indicates that you took a wider variety, but I feel like the consensus was a lot of things that depicted some form of slaughter. I feel like I saw a lot of Like Americans laying on the ground, Brazil celebrating.
It was a bit of slaughter and a bit of cynicism about US soccer. Yeah. So I guess we're not responsible for the contents of these tweets.
No, we're not.
We just decided to read them on the show.
Retweets aren't endorsements, I guess. Reading out a tweet is not an endorsement.
Kind of is because we chose it, right?
Soccer never sleeps, says dollar signs on one side, empty seats on the other, hashtag USMNT.
I would love to sell that scarf outside of a stadium when the US is playing if the ticket prices were too high, as they are this time around.
Yes, they are. I mean, unless you want to pay $70 to watch Neymar with binoculars.
Do you have the binoculars or does Neymar?
Probably me. You never know what he's going to get up to, but probably the person in the upper deck.
Do you remember seeing that? It was a game show. It was either Japanese or Norwegian where they had the players play, but they had to wear reverse binoculars, so that everything was weird and small and they're all off balance.
That would be a further limitation for Brazil, but maybe we could use. Yeah, we could try them.
If we can get Neymar to wear those for this game. Tyler Dennis says his scarf would have US soccer pushing Christian Pulisic in front of a bus with Soccer by Ives sitting in the driver's seat.
All right.
And on the other side, US fans lined up for autographs from the Brazil team. And he ends with hashtag ProRail for USA.
Yikes.
We'll leave that hashtag alone because that's a
lot going on in that tweet.
Conversation. So we've done some reading, right, about US soccer pushing Pulisic in front of a bus with Soccer by Ives. That's Ives Galasep.
And that's going to be the longer conversation. Should US fans not ask Brazil players for autographs?
I think he's implying that a lot of US fans going to this game are going to see Neymar and co, as opposed to going to see the US team.
That's true, but I also feel like it's kind of what you do when the guest comes to town, is you're excited to talk to the guest. I don't know. I don't have much criticism of that.
All right.
Anyway,
but let's talk about
the thing that we should talk about,
because it's a conversation starter.
Yeah.
So there was an article published on soccerbyIves.com by Ives Galasep, a long-time US national team journalist, soccer journalist, essentially suggesting that it's a problem that Christian Pulisic is missing so many games for the US national team.
Well, he does phrase it as a question.
He does, yeah. Including this one that he pulled out of with, muscular problems or a muscular injury. And the interesting part to me is that in the story, no one's quoted, but US soccer sources are sort of making clear that they also think it's a problem.
Yes.
Yeah.
We think so, right? Because it's one of two things. Either it's a story of like, why is Christian Pulisic missing so many games? Let's find out. And so that was what led a lot of the questions that were asked and a lot of the answers they got back. Or it was U.S. Soccer kind of wanted to say, yeah, he hasn't been around, and that's not great.
So there's a chance, I'm not saying it's definite, but there's a chance that U.S. Soccer basically put this information out through Ives to almost subtly like nudge Christian Pulisic and say, let it be known that we think he's not as fully committed as we would like him to be. If so, I don't think this is a smart move.
I mean, I don't think it's a smart move for a number of reasons. And that's why I almost want to believe they're not doing that. And it is like somebody from Ives or Ives calling and saying, hey, why isn't Christian Pulisic here? Was the injury that bad? And when they said, well, the injury wasn't that bad. If it were a World Cup year, he would have played. But since it's not, he didn't.
That's pretty much what was said, right?
And so you could take that quote and make it, he could have played, but he didn't. I'm not saying that's what Ives did, but you could read it that way. Or you could read it from the opposite perspective of people at U.S. Soccer are frustrated that he's not there. But to me, that's such a stupid thing to be upset about when within the article, most of those people at some point or another acknowledge, he did play a whole season. He was really tired, so that's why he didn't play in that one friendly. And yes, he does have an injury, but he could have played. It's a lot of that.
I'm worried. I think we're doing it wrong. I think Christian Pulisic is still only 19 and we're putting far too much pressure on his shoulders. And he's going to come to see US national team games as a grind where he's pressured to play when maybe he doesn't want to. You know, if there's a game that he's injured in, he's going to get pressured to play in it. I think this could be a problem. This is not how you should treat a 19-year-old up-and-coming superstar.
If it's U.S. Soccer. And the other thing that I would say that makes me further confused as to who might be responsible or what the origin
Where does
of
this begin, right? Is this an Ives story where he calls U.S. Soccer and gets some quotes, or is it U.S. Soccer sort of suggesting his
Well, yes, there's that.
Here's a story.
But what I was going to say is, no, it's more so John Brooks. It's John Brooks hasn't played. John Brooks is playing one game in this, and then he's going back, right? That was announced today that he's only going to play the Brazil friendly.
Yep.
So, where's the criticism of John Brooks? Christian Pulisic came in and played that one game against Bolivia and then didn't play the ensuing two friendlies. Isn't that the same thing? So, that's the thing that I don't know what to make of, because it is a very similar scenario, but you don't have that same conversation about John Brooks, and I don't know if that's because Ives wasn't asking about John Brooks or U.S. Soccer isn't as concerned about John Brooks. They're more concerned about Christian Pulisic.
The thing that I think is worth pointing out very strongly here is that Christian Pulisic was injured enough to miss a Dortmund game.
Yeah.
Right? He could not play in Dortmund's game this past Friday against Hanover because of this injury that they're talking about. So it's not as if this injury is conjured up out of nothing. This is a real thing.
Yeah, yes, you're absolutely correct. And to your earlier point, you're absolutely correct that if this is U.S. Soccer choosing to go to war against Christian Pulisic, that might be one they don't win. And I'm not saying like...
From a PR perspective, yeah.
And I firmly believe that no player is bigger than the club. Like, I think that is a good mentality to have. I'm not contradicting that here, but I am saying that Christian Pulisic is your meal ticket right now. And if you're U.S. Soccer and you want to try to sort of, like, get him in line or whatever it might be, I'm not sure you're going to win that one.
Remember, he's a teenager, and treat him with some respect and with some kindness.
Because much as I don't want to admit this, I agree with that. I would also say, like, U.S. Soccer needs him a lot more than he needs U.S. Soccer. Like, I would say he is the most famous American player right now.
Yeah, of course.
I don't think there's anybody that close to him.
Yeah.
And, I mean...
All respect to Aaron Lang.
We got plenty of time until the next World Cup. Like, so he is... If U.S. Soccer wants to go to war, I'm not sure they are going to enjoy the war of attrition that follows.
All right, Tyler, that was definitely a conversation starter.
Yeah.
Other potential custom designed scarves. Mark Bajarski says one side of his scarf for the USA-Brazil game would say, attack, 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 and the other would say, just foul him. That way, we're prepared for anything.
I like it. I feel like it might be more of one of those things than the other against Brazil. We shall see.
I think it's more defend, 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 and then maybe also just foul him.
Yeah. And BV3, last one, says, it would look like a new coach.
Ooh, I'm imagining a coach called Scarfy.
Okay.
A coach made out of scarves.
I was just imagining a new bus. I used your people's terminology.
Oh, wordplay. Yeah, the highest form of wit.
Of course.
I'm really imagining an Invisible Man style coach where he's just the only way you can see him is because he's wrapped in lots of scarves.
Are we talking like an H.G. Wells Invisible Man, a Ralph Ellison Invisible Man, or a Chevy Chase Invisible Man?
The one where the scarves would be wrapped around so that you could see him.
All right.
Is that the Chevy Chase one?
Sure. Yeah. Why not?
All right, well, thank you to everybody for your Roughneck Scarves suggestions. If you would like to get 20% off any scarf you find at roughneckscarves.com, what's the discount code, Mr. Rockwell?
It's Total Soccer Show, all one word.
It is Total Soccer Show, all one word, at roughneckscarves.com for 20% off any scarf that you find there.
All right, thank you to Roughneck Scarves for sponsoring today's episode. More to come, starting with the U.S. team. We've got a lot to talk about.
Okay, so how do we think they're going to line up? That's the big question, right? Yep. What is the shape going to be? Here's my proposal, is I think looking at the France game, which I think most people will have forgotten because it was just before the World Cup, that we're going to see that 5-3-2 once again.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is that because you think it worked really well, or you think it was a sign of what Dave Sarachan was building on? Because he's been talking a lot about we're building towards something. We've laid this foundation. Now we want to keep it growing. So do you think that's what he's implying, is that we're building towards a back 3/5?
No, actually, I think when Dave Sarachan talks about building towards something, he's mostly talking about bringing young players in, getting them some international experience, and almost maybe just building a culture around the team, as opposed to we're building towards this specific tactical system.
Okay.
Right?
So would the culture then, sorry to get off topic, but
it's fine.
With that culture, do you think then is young players or new players or trying different stuff?
Seems to be, right?
Okay.
Seems to be young players and new players and getting them international experience.
I ask because this is the one thing that I find is really keeping me from being 100% excited about these friendlies. It remains not that Dave Sarachan, it's like Dave Sarachan in charge, but just that it's still that interim manager. You like to see these friendlies as the manager building towards something. That against Brazil, we're going to try this and see if it works because it worked against France. If it does work, then we're going to keep going with that.
Yeah.
But you don't really have that idea of there's more to come.
You still do that even though Sarachan is not necessarily going to be the permanent coach. I still think a shape that works and a shape that doesn't work is still things that is taken into account from the past and used here, right? So what I'm thinking is, because we went up against a very talented France team, and we played 5 at the back, right? You could call it a 3-5-2, but those fullbacks stayed home a lot, right? It was a 5-3-2 against France, and we held them 1-1. Wasn't a necessarily heroic or impressive performance, but we did frustrate them a lot. Get one on the break in the first half, then concede later. Kylian Mbappe scored the equaliser. I think that is, in Dave Sarachan's head, the way to play against superior opposition.
I would agree with that, and I would add, but I think it's also maybe the way he sees to get a result, to get a draw, to get a win potentially. Yeah. And I think to be a little bit more defensive against a team like Brazil is justifiable and understandable, especially if it leads to a result like they got against France.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it may be the only way we can do it,
Yeah.
right? If we were more open, if we played a 4-3-3 or maybe even that 4-1-4-1 thing that we did against Portugal that I kind of liked, there's a chance that we get torn apart. So
Yeah.
maybe you just have to get numbers behind the ball.
Yeah, because the thing to remember there is like, well, we did it 4-1-4-1 against Portugal and it worked there. We did a 4-1-4-1 against Ireland and it very much did not work.
It did not work, not at all.
And so I think that's maybe more dependent on a player like Christian Pulisic being there to give you a little bit more attacking creativity. If you don't have that player, then maybe it is a bit more of a defensive 5-3-2.
Do you agree that they'll go 5-3-2? I feel quite convinced by it, but I'm ready to be wrong when the lineup comes out.
I mean, I don't know because we just don't know what he's done different stuff. He might try different things against Brazil, but I think you have made a more compelling argument than me saying I don't know. So I'm willing to go along with you on it.
I mean,
I think there's still a chance that it's a 4-1-4-1 or something like it, but I think there's equally a chance we see a back five.
My guess is back five against Brazil, maybe back to the 4-3-3/4-1-4-1 against Mexico, who you could argue are more of an equal footing team to go up against. And there's that quote is it a Jeff Carlisle article of Saracen saying we're going to try two different systems in these two games.
Was that the one that was in the Brooks is going home article?
Yes,
yeah.
Was that Jeff Carlisle or not?
I can't remember.
Okay, so but it was definitely ESPN, right? Yeah, and John Brooks going home after this game, so he's definitely playing in this game.
Yeah.
Worth remembering when we put this team together. The one final thing I want to ask about shape is, again, I rewatched some of that France stuff. I think you did as well, right? The USA-France game. We sat very, very, very deep, right? I'm hoping, even if it's the 5-3-2, it's not the whole team in our own box, which is what it got towards being towards the end of that game.
Yes. I mean, it may still be that because that's kind of what happens when you're figuring out a formation and playing it against the eventual world champions. Also worth remembering France and Brazil, two very different animals. So not just, they're both very good, so it works against both.
Yeah.
But what I really would like and what I think we've been getting somewhat is consistency, that we've been getting more defensively oriented, rigid performances from the U.S. national team. I'm good with that. I would like to see it be, this worked against France, we're going to fine-tune it a little bit and try to do it again against Brazil, as opposed to, we're going to try something totally different.
This is what I want. I want a shape and a style that we use against a Brazil or a France or a Germany or a really good team, and then I want a different shape where it's a game where we have a fighting chance to go toe-to-toe and possibly win the game, which is how I would classify Mexico.
And not to go too far down fair. And not to go too far down that rabbit hole, but then once you've got those two systems, you can throw in a hybrid if you need to, or you can change it up on the fly, and it allows you that tactical creativity that we saw from, say, Belgium, where they suddenly changed it and had a left back become a central midfielder and a central midfielder become an attacking midfielder, and you can have that level of variability because you've got that foundational basis. So I think, again, I'm with you for that reason as well.
They also had Lukaku. Can we have him?
Yeah, sure, why not? I don't know. Our striking options are pretty much just the exact same, so we're fine.
Should we get to probably what most people came here for?
Sure.
The picking of the 11.
That sounds so formal. The picking of the 11.
I know, deliberately. Mock formal is what it was. So let's assume 5-3-2. We've got our roster, right? We know who's available for selection. One update, I don't know if you saw this. In the LA Times, it was reported possibly the reason for Marky Delgado's call-up is that Sebastian Lletget isn't fully fit. He's been missing some practice sessions. So just so you know that's going on.
That's interesting.
I'm going to assume neither of those guys were in your starting 11 anyway.
They were not, but that's interesting because I think Matt Doyle wrote a good preview where he was saying that he didn't expect Sebastian Lletget to be considered as a central midfield option.
Yeah.
If they're bringing Marky Delgado to replace him, maybe that implies they were?
I don't know.
Interesting stuff. Interesting stuff. I imagine we might find out more against Mexico.
Yes.
Yes. Against Brazil, though, if we're going to go with, let's start with goalkeeper, obviously, and we can just say Zach Steffen and move on.
Let's just hope Zach Steffen starts. Yeah, that's what we want. That's what we think Saracen will do. Zach Steffen's going to start.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. 3 centre backs in the back 5. It's got to be John Brooks, right? He's only playing this game. He's been released after this. He won't play in the Mexico game. I think we didn't fully explain it was because essentially we know he's had all these injury problems. Yep. I think it's very sensible to have him play in this Brazil game, then let him go and have a little bit of extra recovery time just to make sure he doesn't get re-injured, right?
Yeah.
This works for me.
Yeah, it works for me as well because these friendlies exist to play 2 different teams, to try different things, to see who can do what. It doesn't make sense to keep John Brooks, make him train, and then have him sit for the second game, and then he goes back a couple days later than he otherwise would have.
In a big ice bath.
Yeah, I like that play.
So in my head, John Brooks is the left centre-back in this formation, and Matt Miazga is the central centre-back. Even though you can very easily argue John Brooks is the senior centre-back, he's played in the World Cup, plays at a higher level, all that sort of stuff, I think it's really important to have a left-footed player as your left centre-back, and I think John Brooks gives you that. I also was impressed with Matt Miazga at centre-back against France. I thought he was the one defender that really was playing passes that broke through lines and found forwards.
Okay.
So that's my case for Miazga in the centre, John Brooks on the left.
So then, worth noting that you had, against France, it was Tim Parker, Matt Miazga in the middle, CCV on the right.
Yep.
So would you keep CCV there? Is that your thoughts?
So this is one of those Saracen versus Darrell things, right? Personally, in this situation, I think I'd want to see Aaron Long. I'd want to see Aaron Long just because I've seen him and I've heard about his athleticism. He sort of covers ground and he's good with the ball. I think we're going to have to cover ground if we get stretched out against Brazil, so it would be good to have Aaron Long given this big test. I'm going to guess it's Cameron Carter-Vickers just because Saracen seems more used to him.
Yeah, and then also
and seems to trust him.
If it is going to be a back four against Mexico, then you keep Tim Parker and Ron Long together. They've got that familiarity. So
or you could do a whole Red Bulls Academy back three in this game.
Sure. No, I think I'm with you. I think it is some form of Miazga, Brooks, and then question mark.
Yeah.
I have CCV in, but there's also a chance that maybe it's Brooks at right center back and Parker keeps his spot from France.
I will bet you $10 million that John Brooks does not play right centre back. Because why would you take your only left-footed centre back and put him on the right?
Because some people don't have the same level of concern about left-footed versus right back that you do, my friend.
Fair enough. I'll bet you Dave Saracen does. Are we overlooking Tim Parker? As a starter? Because he started in that.
I'm not. I had him starting. You don't.
You have him starting?
Yeah.
Where do you have him starting?
As left center back.
And John Brooks on the right. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, that was what made the most sense to me because generally speaking, that back three looked okay against France, but there were lots of moments, including the Kylian Mbappe's goal against France, is CCV letting a little bit of a gap emerge, and then in trying to close it, he slips, and that's why he can't get to Mbappe in time.
Yeah.
Not trying to say that one moment makes an entire game, but maybe that's a reason why we see CCV not go up against the stronger attacking opposition. Who knows, though? You may well be right.
The other part of this is, if you think of Neymar dribbling in from the left, if our right back, who I guess we'll name in a second, but his name is DeAndre Yedlin, gets beaten, then the guy who's either helping Yedlin against Neymar or is the next wave of defence to take on Neymar is going to be that right centre-back.
Yep.
So maybe John Brooks does go there because it's more important to have a very strong defender in that spot. But then I guess on the other side, you've got Willian or Douglas Costa coming in. So it's scary from all angles.
I just feel like you've gone from I'll give you $10 million to maybe it happens very quickly.
I mean, we both know that check would bounce very high.
So then, I mean, for sake of argument, do you want to go Miazga, Brooks, CCV?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Okay.
Or so not in that order. Brooks, Miazga, CCV.
Left to right?
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. There's our back three.
And then DeAndre Yedlin, as you said.
DeAndre Yedlin is our right wing back. Weirdly, against France, Shaqmore started and Yedlin came in.
Weird,
right?
Yep.
But Yedlin's definitely the senior figure here. I think Yedlin to start as right wing back against Brazil. I also think we've had at least two conversations in recent weeks about how Yedlin has struggled against players in the Premier League, right? This Neymar test, this is probably the best left winger you can go up against in the whole world right now.
I mean, I would say the other candidate might be not necessarily left winger, but Eden Hazard, who did kind of eviscerate DeAndre Yedlin recently. So maybe he can redeem himself against Neymar if that situation arises.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
All right, so
a lot of maybes in that one.
We think it's Yedlin, maybe Shaqmore later on, or maybe Shaqmore in the next game.
Yeah.
On the left side, it's either Anthony Robinson or Eric Lehigh.
Robinson.
For a wing-back position, it's got to be Anthony Robinson, right?
I mean, it was against France. I think it will be against Brazil. I think he's also probably a starting left-back in whatever formation we're playing.
It feels that way, right? It's really gone from, he's in the squad and he's not playing, to he's our first-choice left-back.
Yes.
Yeah?
I foresee now, if and when a permanent manager is appointed, like 2 years from now, us struggling to remember who got their debut when and who became established under Dave Saracen versus whomever the next manager is.
Yeah.
Anthony Robinson is going to be one of those.
I think whatever happens, Dave Saracen will be the answer to a lot of those questions.
You think
Just because so many players were debuted under Saracen, right? Tyler Adams, Weston McKennie, so on. All those guys will get their debut under Saracen.
But we shall see. We shall see
They
how
already
he's
have.
remembered.
Oh,
we
I
shall
see.
Is all I'm saying.
Here's while we're on fullbacks, if we do play this 5-3-2, the interesting thing for me will be how much do they get forward? Do they all just stand there in a back five and only very timidly venture out occasionally? Or do we, if and when we win the ball back against Brazil, do we go bursting on the break and make something happen? I'm really interested to see how far forward Yedlin and Robinson are prepared to go against Brazil.
I don't see why you would play Robinson and Yedlin and not have one of them get forward on a consistent basis, at least one of them. Because, I mean, that's the major threat of DeAndre Yedlin.
Yeah.
He is not a lockdown defender by any stretch of the imagination. His threat is in being good defensively and being fast and attacking as well. So if you're going to go defensive, maybe you play somebody else there. If you're going to go attacking, then I think it is DeAndre Yedlin. And I think if it is Yedlin and Robinson, then maybe that's an indicator that we are going to be attacking.
But I'm really asking about degrees, right? Because against France, it was, say, Moore and Robinson, and they stayed back quite a lot and didn't get forward all that much. Yeah, so
when Shaq Moore started.
Yeah, it's just a thing I'll be looking for, basically. Okay, do you want to go to central midfield?
Sure. I mean, I think it's pretty straightforward, to be honest.
Do you?
Yes.
Okay, that's interesting because there's a lot of central midfielders on this roster.
Yeah, are they named Will Trapp, Tyler Adams, and Weston McKennie?
They could be, and that was the lineup against France. And I know Dave Sarkin is a big fan of Will Trapp, seems to be. Made him captain, I believe. So I'm guessing the shape is a number 6 and what you'd call 2 number 8s. And I think it's worth taking a second to stop and explain that because I know sometimes we say those numbers and we get emails from people saying, what are you talking about?
Sure. So the number 6 historically is going to be your holding midfielder. They're going to sit the deepest. If they're Michael Bradley, they're going to drop between the 2 center backs. But generally speaking, they're going to be the connective tissue between the defense and the attack in helping spring attacks, but then also sitting deep and helping kind of block out the middle.
And in a back 3 especially, you're not going to have them go between the center backs. So they really are charged with just patrolling in front of the back line.
Yep. What about number 8s?
Number 8s, essentially, if you imagine the number 6 as the central and deeper, number 8s are ahead of him to the right and to the left, one each, number 8, and then they'll be tasked with joining the attack when the US attacks, but also making sure to come back when the US defends. So a 6 and 2 8s. And you're saying Will Trapp is the 6, Adams and McKennie as the 8s.
Yeah. The way I always kind of explain it to if my wife is confused by 6, 8, 10 is 6 is sitting the deepest, 10 is your more attacking player, and then if you think of them as shuttles, when you have to run back and forth to do shuttles, 8 is the shuttler. He's running between the 6 and the 10 back and forth, basically.
So why are we doing 2 8s and not 6, 8 and 10?
Because, first of all, we don't have a number 10. That's a big part of it. At least in this roster, we don't.
Fair.
Second, by all accounts, Dave Sarkin doesn't like playing with a number 10. He doesn't like one player being responsible for all of the creation of a team or creativity of a team. And 3, it's because it's Brazil. And we're going to want more players behind the ball working hard and hassling people.
We'd get eviscerated if we just had a 10. So a 6 and 2 8s. The one, I don't disagree that Trapp, McKennie, Adams is the way to go. I think that kind of works because Trapp distributes the ball and McKennie and Adams can really cover a lot of ground and you trust them to read what's happening and make some tackles, right? I wouldn't mind seeing Tyler Adams play number 6.
Really?
Yes, because he's been doing it for Red Bulls, doing it successfully, because he covers a lot more ground than Will Trapp. He can get places faster than Will Trapp. And I think if we are going to risk being more attacking, I'd like to see someone who can just cover ground faster and get there faster. And that's why I think Tyler Adams might be the guy to do it. And then for me, maybe it'd be, and this is me talking as a Will Trapp admirer, right? Adams as the number 6, and then let's say Weston McKennie and Kellen Acosta as the 2 8s.
Okay. I mean, I can see why you would make that argument and why you would want that. I really think given the season that Will Trapp has had on either side of the ball, as I believe Matt Doyle summed it up, it makes more sense. And given what I almost forgot his name, what Dave Sarkin has done so far, it makes sense to have him in there. I think I just don't trust him to experiment that much. But I know that
he gave Trapp the armband as well, so it suggests that Will Trapp's gonna start. Right? And I'll be surprised if it's Christian Roldan or Marky Delgado or something like that. That will be a surprise to me.
100%. The one that so I feel very confident in those 3. Maybe it is another name thrown in there or 2 other names. The question marks I have are around the attack. That's where I'm sort of at a loss.
Okay, so we'll move to our essentially 2 forwards.
If that's okay with you, unless there's more you wanted to get to with the midfield.
No, I think we're just getting deeper in the weeds for no good reason. I think we've made clear what it is, except to say that it's really important that midfield 3 is well organised defensively, but then is capable of breaking and joining the attack. Otherwise, we're just going to be defending and losing the ball. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think... I'm with you just because it would be interesting to see Tyler Adams as a number 6, and I keep trying to talk myself into it, but part of my brain just won't let me because I think again if we're going for consistency and familiarity, that's what Trapp did against France. It makes sense to keep him there and let him evolve a little bit more rather than be like, never mind, we're going to let somebody else do the job and see what happens.
Okay, I'm with you then. No, I'd go Trapp Adams.
All right, fine.
But I'll be looking for Adams and McKennie to maybe contribute more to the attack to contribute as much to the attack as the defense, maybe this time round.
All right.
In transitions.
Well, speaking of that attack, it was Bobby Wood and Julian Green against France. I think there's a decent chance it's that again against Brazil.
I do as well, just for consistency. And just because I can't see why else Julian Green was on this roster other than Saracen thought he performed that role well and got himself a goal in that France game.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's about it. I would maybe take issue with some of that, though. Not with what you're saying, but with the idea that, like, he had a great game, he scored a goal, so let's get him in there again. Like, yes, he did score the goal. Worth remembering, it was a big mistake that allowed him to score that goal. And for that moment, I saw plenty.
Sidibe, right?
Yes, and that was the last we saw.
From a Shaq Moore cross, by the way.
There we go. All right, Shaq Moore getting in there, getting in the attack. It's just I saw so many sequences where he would try to drop in and help link up play or help reestablish possession, and US would get the ball back, and then it was errant passing and a lack of connectivity in the middle. So I think you're right that maybe he's justified it just because he scored the goal and maybe did what Dave Saracen wanted. But I still, as always, have question marks around Julian Green starting.
Well, here's the point of what I was saying about how he did what Saracen wanted. You said he did what Saracen wanted. I think part of the job is that Bobby Wood is the farthest forward. He's chasing people down. Yeah. He's the guy at the point of the attack. And then Julian Green's job is is sometimes to partner Bobby Wood, but other times to come back and partner the three central midfielders. Because a lot of the time, when we really bunkered, we ended up in a 5-4-1 with Green joining the midfielders to form a midfield four. So it's going to need to be someone. That's why, in a weird way, I don't think it can be Novakovic and Wood, for example, because it doesn't make sense for either of them to come back and join the midfield.
No.
Julian Green makes a little more sense as an extra midfielder.
Yes, I think so. So then I would be okay with that. I would find it strange. I guess he'd probably play against Mexico, but it does feel like this is a team that could use Timothy Weah in it.
Yes.
Maybe not starting. Maybe you bring him on as an impact sub, but that's the other name that I had in there, and I wasn't quite sure where he fits.
Yes. So, to me, I've never seen him in a front two, I don't think, ever. For the US under-17s, it was like a left, centre, right, three, right, and he was the left winger. For PSG, it's been left, centre, right. I think every time he's played for the US...
I think PSG are going to develop him as a centre forward. I think he'll be a striker.
And that's where he's played as a centre forward, but not with a partner. Yeah. What I'm saying. He's never played as part of a front two. And then when he has played for the US, it's been in that 4-3-3 type thing. He's been one of the wide players. Yeah. So I may have been just not thinking about him as one of the front two just because I haven't seen him there before. Now we say I wouldn't mind seeing Tim Weah in the Julian Green role. So it'd be Bobby Wood and Tim Weah, and then Weah joins the attack sometimes, drops back other times. I don't know if he can do it, but that's because I haven't seen enough of Tim Weah to know if that's in his skill set or not.
Well, what we do know he can do, granted it was against Bolivia and whatever iteration of that team it was, but how often did we see him and Josh Sargent combine in little one-touch sequences that really carved apart that Bolivian defense? He is capable of sort of dropping in, getting that ball, helping kickstart attacks or keep attacks going. I could see him do that. That said...
and then he's the transition on the counter-attack.
Yeah?
Yeah, okay.
All right. So maybe it's Timothy Weah, but there's also a decent chance that it's Julian Green here, and then when the U.S. plays a 4-3-3 or 4-1-4-1, it's Timothy Weah out wide against Mexico.
That probably makes more sense.
Yeah.
Right? So, okay, but if we could have what we wanted, would we have Tim Weah and Bobby Wood, or would we have Julian Green and Bobby Wood?
I mean, I'm not sure I would have Bobby Wood, but probably Timothy Weah.
You would go Weah Novakovic?
I would go, I don't know. I would frantically try to get someone citizenship, maybe.
Lukaku again?
Yeah, sure. We'll see what he's up to. Guest player? Can we have him? Come on. I think I would probably rather see Bobby Wood and Timothy Weah, to be honest, especially because most of this team, as we've picked it, is very similar to the team we saw against France. So I feel like we have enough of the consistency in there to make both of us happy. Then you can have a few moments of experimentation. I think Timothy Weah or Julian Green, I like that sort of debate.
Okay, all right. One thing I think we got stuck on earlier was me asking how far forward the fullbacks get. And in hindsight, I think you thought I was asking how far forward should they get. What I'm really asking is how far forward can they get? And that's going to be a question for viewers as you're watching this game. You'll know how the US is doing, sort of whether the fullbacks get forward or not, right? So I'm thinking of maybe markers of success for the US in this game. I'm wondering if we can come up with some other markers of success. For example, do we maintain possession of the ball?
No.
I think we don't maintain
No,
possession.
no.
Why not?
Because that's not what this team, if it's as we've suggested against Brazil, that's not what this team is set up to do. It's set up to sit deep, frustrate, probably be a little physical against players that require physicality, and then look to counterattack fast, pretty much. And then look to counterattack.
Well, the interesting thing for me was against France, we didn't desperately rapidly counterattack and risk giving the ball away. It wasn't like Leicester City style. We really did sort of have a weird little spells of possession after we'd won the ball back because France never came after us. But then we ended up just mostly passing it around the back.
Yep.
I don't think Brazil will let us do that.
No, and it's also worth remembering that's France at home before the World Cup kicks off, and there was already lots of concern about the French team at that point.
Yeah.
So there is an element of the U.S. can afford to do that because it's on France to try to go and get that win. The pressure is on them to win at home or at least get a result at home. So you're kind of quelling the masses a little bit. Brazil not going to have that pressure.
Okay, yeah. I guess they also don't have the pressure of a World Cup coming up, so they can risk getting injured by maybe pressing a bit more.
Yeah.
So here's what I'm guessing. Maybe the US comes under more pressure when they have the ball, and then we'll see what they're made of, right? We'll see, can Tyler Adams and Weston McKennie pass their way through a Brazilian midfield that includes Casemiro and Felipe Coutinho and get the ball to Bobby Wood? Or are they going to run into that more experienced wall and lose the ball?
Mm-hmm. Yeah? See, all of this seems to be you thinking about attacking. Like you're talking about how far forward the fullback's going to be and how do we attack. I just feel like that's not a thing that I'm even concerned about because I don't think we're going to be doing it
You think it's
enough.
all defending?
Pretty much.
Do you think we'll be sitting in that 5-3-2/5-4-1?
Yeah. My thing that will indicate the U.S. is executing their game plan is if you see a lot of Brazilians shooting from low percentage positions.
Shots from distance.
You see shots from distance or shots from a tight angle when they've been shepherded in and it's a 2v1 and they just try to get a shot off.
Yeah.
That, to me, will tell the tale because I do think it's going to be Brazil with the lion's share of possession and how the U.S. operates within that percentage is the key for me.
Okay, so I do not disagree. Then my question is, what do we do with that 20% of time where we possibly have the ball? You're saying you want to see us go kind of quickly on the counter. I think
so.
I'd be in for that as well,
I think so. I think with the discipline of if Yedlin goes, then Robertson stays. If Robertson stays, then Yedlin goes. That sort of basic fullback, wingback discipline of not committing too many people forward, but whichever side it's on, and try to break down there.
Yeah.
Because, to your earlier point, Casemiro is going to sit there, and he is very difficult to get by. And so if you are, Weston McKennie, and if it is sitting deep and you get that ball, and maybe Julian Green's dropped in a little bit, maybe Bobby Wood is still ahead of him, but suddenly Bobby Wood is 40 yards away and Julian Green is 30 yards away or 25 yards away, that's not an easy link up to make, especially with Casemiro sitting between.
Yeah.
So I think breaking down the channels is the way that makes more sense to kind of bypass the way Brazil will set up.
Okay, yeah, I'm good with that.
Okay.
What if we're wrong and it's not 5 at the back?
Yeah.
And Saracen does go 4 at the back. So 4-3-3 maybe. I don't think we need to go through the whole team again because it's only a couple of slight tweaks.
I'm
right?
not sure it changes that much. Yeah,
it's Brooks and Miazga, right? If it's a back 2 centre backs.
Yeah,
it's
and
the
then
same
Alex Bono
fullbacks.
in goal.
It's the same discussion we had about the central midfield. I'm not even going to acknowledge that. The same discussion we had about the central midfield 3 still applies, right? Then it's probably Bobby Wood as the central forward, and then it's who are your 2 wide guys?
Yep.
It becomes the only question, right? So that's my question to you: is if we do go 4-3-3. Who are those wide guys? Maybe Tim Weah, we talked about?
Yeah, I think Tim Weah has a decent chance. The other one, I wouldn't have said this up until maybe the past week, is maybe Paul Arriola. Because for DC United, he's been playing right back due to injury, not because that's where he wants to play, but he's played there before. When he was in Mexico, he did that as well. So maybe you play him on the right wing, but with a more you got to pay attention to defense, get back, and if Yedlin goes, maybe he sits deep a little bit.
That would make sense to me.
I would be shocked to see that.
That would make sense to me as a move that is both attacking enough, but also gives you enough defensive solidity, right? Which isn't, with all respect, that isn't what you'd say about Tim Weah because of his inexperience and the fact that he wants to play centre forward and he'll just basically play left wing for you if you want. We haven't mentioned Jassy Zardes.
No, we haven't.
It wouldn't surprise me to see him say replace Bobby Wood for 20 minutes and he plays that farthest forward role that Bobby Wood's playing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm with you 100% because it's just Novakovic, for everything I've enjoyed of him, he is not fleet of foot. I wouldn't say that. He's smart. He can play a smart pass. He can obviously score a goal, but I don't know if he is what you need against Brazil unless you're going to try to go long a little bit or look for him to hold up play a little bit and alleviate some of the pressure. he feels like either a late game substitution against Brazil or, in my opinion, more likely starting or a substitution against Mexico.
Yes, I'm with you on that. I hope we see at least a bit of everybody there, right? I want to see a bit of Zardes, a bit of Novakovic, Bobby Wood, and Julian Green.
I think,
and Tim Weah, obviously.
I would agree with that.
Okay. Any more on this game before we move on?
No, I mean, it's nice to feel vaguely excited about a U.S. game as opposed to depressed. It was, I'm not going to lie, it was depressing rewatching that France game, not because of the soccer played or the result or anything, but just re-listening to how much of that commentary from Ian Darke and Taylor Twellman, I think I just said commentator is what I was about to do there, was rooted in...
Secret ambition.
Yeah, it was rooted in, It was rooted in sadness, in pessimism, in, they didn't qualify. It feels kind of bleak before World Cup. Would these guys be going? Would this player be going?
I keep forgetting it was pre-World Cup.
So much about what, like, the U.S. failing to qualify. This is the first game after that. I think we talked about how this would feel like the time when it was kind of finally in the past.
Yep.
And that's how I feel a little bit right now.
We did think we'd have a new head coach.
We did think that.
That's maybe a conversation
for
another time. All right, so the game again is scheduled to be a 7:30 Eastern kickoff. I believe it's on Fox Sports 1. I haven't checked that, but I'm pretty confident.
It's going to be at 8:15 on Fox Sports 2.
Then we'll be back Friday night. We will be watching in studio with our nerd hats on and taking a good look at this game. We'll definitely give you a quick hot take. We may do a longer review depending on how much there is to talk about in this game.
Yep. Yeah? That we shall see. It's up to you. Make it exciting, gentlemen.
Up to me?
And maybe we do a full review.
Players. It's up to the players.
Yeah. I'm sure they're listening.
Here's to a good game.
Yeah.
All right. Today's show sponsored by The Athletic.
Yeah,
they're back for October.
Yeah, they are.
Excuse me, September.
Yeah, they
they're
are.
back for September. I've sold another month of ads.
Yeah, wishful thinking. Why not?
The Athletic is back as a sponsor in September. It has become a pleasure of mine to do an Athletic ad, open the app up and see, what stories can we talk about?
Yep.
And there's always something
There always are.
good. Which two stories, I know the answer to this already, because there are two stories that jumped out at both of us when we opened it up today.
I'll go first, and I'll say Felipe Cardenas's... what would you call it? Like bio? Like I don't know.
Profile.
There we go. Thank you. Of Andrew Carleton.
Yep.
My inability to describe the article aside, it was really interesting to me. The one that stood out to me, there's a quick little line where Andrew Carleton says, like, for a goal to happen, someone has to beat somebody. Like, you have to get by a player in a 1v1 situation.
He talks about magic, didn't he? He talks about a little bit of magic.
I think so. But it was really interesting to me because that's not how I see it. Like, I have never been that player who's, like, really up for the 1v1. I'm going to take this player on and beat him. But to me, that speaks to...
You dribble all the time.
Yeah, but I have never been like, well, the key to this game is I get by this player. I'm going to make this goal happen. It's much more like, okay, we're playing a system, we're working within it, I'm doing my job. If I do my job right, then we score.
Yeah.
So to me, to hear him say that, it speaks to the type of player that U.S. soccer needs. That player who's like, I want that ball, give me the ball. In that moment, I want to take people on and get that result.
That line is why he's different.
I am not what U.S. soccer needs.
It's why... They need you behind a mic. It's what makes Andrew Carleton different. It's the reason we're excited about Andrew Carleton, right?
And maybe it's just because on the the Athletic Soccer page you can still find the Clint Dempsey retirement announcement sort of thing, and so it just feels like Clint Dempsey tries stuff is I believe how they've amended that quote. Andrew Carleton seems well suited to pick up that mantle.
Yeah, there we go. There's a weird generational thing, right? There should have been a player in between those two.
Should have been.
Which may explain the whole problem.
Might could.
Yeah, might could. There are also a lot of good little moments in the article. If you're wondering why isn't Andrew Carleton starting every game for Atlanta, why isn't Andrew Carleton already playing for the senior US men's national team, there are some answers in there.
Why hasn't he won the World Cup yet?
Why hasn't he won the World Cup?
What is he doing?
Why hasn't he changed his name to American Neymar? There are quotes from Tata Martino, quotes from the Atlanta United 2 coach, whose name escapes me right now. His first name is Scott. But essentially talking about what he's still working on.
Merrill Giartino, I think.
What he's still working on, what he's learning, and what he needs to do to get better. All that is in Felipe Cardenas' article.
Yeah.
Another one that stood out to me, Paul Tenorio's story about MLS. You didn't read this one, right?
No.
Okay, so I read it.
I was instructed not to read it, so you can tell me about it.
So no, I was scared of us both reading it and then us both getting too much in the details and giving details.
No.
More maybe me.
Yeah.
But essentially, Paul Tenorio has been talking to some unnamed but MLS front office people and executives about what the potential changes to the roster rules might be that would benefit Major League Soccer. And there's a lot of ideas in there. And these aren't just like Paul Tenorio writing things on a board and just thinking up his own ideas. These are things that have come from people within the league, so they could be happening. That's why it's more interesting to me. And it's a lot of things like making TAM just part of the salary cap, right? Rather than everyone go through the extra process, just make TAM part of the salary cap. And things like the designated player. The first percentage chunk of a designated player's salary still counts against the cap, shrinking that percentage so that you can pay Giovinco, but you don't have to then also have his salary eat a bunch of your MLS salary cap. So more money for more players to get paid.
Sounds very commonsensical, so we'll see if it happens.
It's essentially all about MLS loosening the rules a little bit so that teams can spend their own money if they want to. Paul, as he does, gets very very deep into the details of how each thing would work. Lots of numbers in there.
I am still picturing a slight Pepe Sylvia scenario of like a board with lots of like lines drawn and papers on it that Paul Tenorio has combined into an article.
That's back tonight, and I haven't set my DVR.
Is it really?
Yeah. You didn't know that?
No, I did not.
I thought you knew.
I don't watch TV anymore,
September 5th, right?
I watch like the 5 things that you can subscribe to, and that's about it. Yeah.
I'm going to maybe call my wife and ask her to set the DVR.
To the point where my wife and I watched like a streamed TV show on like DirecTV Now, and we're sort of like, oh, right, commercials.
Speaking of commercials, if you would like to subscribe to The Athletic and get 40% off, we're one of the good commercials, don't worry. Go to theathletic.com/TSS September, TSS September, and you'll get 40% off your subscription to The Athletic, where all the good soccer writing is.
And us. Final section on today's show, Scouting Network, Mr. Grove.
Oh, yeah.
It's getting bigger. It's getting longer. We got a lot of reports to get to.
We keep adding scouts.
We sure do. Brian Hoysa scouting Serginho Dest, 17-year-old American right winger for the Ajax U19s. Serginho Dest started regularly last season for Ajax's U19s as right back, but it appears he may be making the switch to playing right wing.
I was about to correct you on calling him a right winger, then I sort of thought, I bet this is going somewhere.
In your face.
Yeah.
After scoring in a preseason friendly...
I didn't do it. I was already... carry on.
I feel like the tradition somewhat continues. After scoring in a preseason friendly against AZ, he started at right wing in the season opener, played the entire match, and assisted the first goal in a 3-0 win over Willem II Tilburg.
Serginho Dest. All right, Steven Speaker is scouting Shandon Hopeu, the 19-year-old American forward for the Seattle Sounders. Steven says, Shandon subbed on in last weekend's game against Orange County SC and put the ball in the back of the net in the 84th minute after splitting the centre-backs and slotting a composed finish by the keeper in a one-on-one. Unfortunately, the goal was brought back, after the assistant referee judged he had handled the ball while bringing it down.
Yeah, that was burying the lead a little bit on that one. I got very excited, and then I was sad.
So the big story is Shandon Hopeu still learning the rules to soccer.
There we go. Jesse Frankel scouting Matteo Retacchio, 16-year-old Italian-American midfielder for Liverpool. Matteo started and went 62 minutes in the Liverpool U18's 2-1 win over the Stoke U18s. Matteo seems to have been used in the number 6 spot and was subbed out in the 62nd minute. He only arrived via his Italian passport in late August, so Jesse is hopeful that Retacchio starts getting full matches sometime soon once he's more familiar with the squad.
So this is a name worth remembering. This is a young American, 16-year-old at Liverpool, Matteo Retacchio. Remember that name.
Remember it good.
Doug Chan and Anurag Anjaria are both scouting Andrea Novakovic, the 21-year-old American striker on loan at Fortuna Sittard from Reading. Novakovic started and scored the equaliser in Fortuna Sittard's 1-1 draw with Utrecht, following a Fortuna free kick into the mixer, and Novakovic was eventually able to fire off a shot and found the back of the net via a heavy deflection. It wasn't the prettiest finish, but it secured a vital point for Fortuna and sent Novakovic off to the US camp on a high note.
So that's a high note. On a less high note, Zachary Lindquist scouting Jackson Ewell, 23-year-old American midfielder for the San Jose Earthquakes. After not seeing the field for 2 months...
Did he have his eyes closed?
What's that?
Did he have his eyes closed?
He did. It was a strange approach to soccer from a youngster. Jackson Ewell finally made another appearance for the first team. That does seem like something Joaquin Phoenix would do, of like, I'm learning the game by not watching the game. He played 30 minutes in a 2-1 loss to Vancouver and recorded an assist as part of his 100% passing stats on the evening. The Earthquakes have been terrible this year, says Zachary, and are now eliminated from the playoffs, so they have no excuse for not playing their kids.
Giant hashtag all caps, play your kids, San Jose.
Yep.
Zane Ziedler is scouting Manny Perez, the 19-year-old American right midfielder for NC State. Zane says just 2 days after NC State's opener against University of South Carolina Upstate, which we now know is an actual school. Apologies to anyone who goes there for me not knowing that. Manny Perez started in a top 20 match.
Fair, it's not your or our fault, I would say. When you go USC, There are two USCs, and when you're talking about soccer,
Yeah.
University of Southern California is the one that tends to come to mind.
Got you. Manny Perez started in a top 20 match up against powerhouse Akron, where he recorded his second assist of the season. Later in the week, NC State, faced Providence, and Manny got his third assist in fairly identical fashion to his second, cutting back to a runner in the box. Copy and paste Manny Perez assist.
You hear that, midfielders? It doesn't always have to be drive to the end line, cross it to the back post, or drive it and then shoot from a tight angle. You can always square to the penalty spot.
It's what Guardiola asks his fullbacks to do.
There we go.
Manny Perez is a U20 right back as well, right? We might be seeing him for the US U20s.
Yeah, more on that on this week's episode of the Top Drawer Soccer Show.
Look
But until
how
then,
I just set you up for a
there we go. Until then, more scouting. Elijah Chappell scouting Joe Willock, 18-year-old English midfielder for Arsenal. Joe scored his first goal of the Premier League 2 season and assisted the match winner in the Arsenal U23's win over Tottenham. Joe scored in the third minute after making an unmarked run through the center of the Spurs defense to receive a pass from teammate John Jules for an easy finish. Willock then returned the favor, setting up John Jules to score the winner in the 58th minute.
All right, Joe.
Reciprocity.
Eric Glasgow is scouting Ezequiel Ponce, the 21-year-old Argentine striker, on loan at AEK Athens from Roma. Do you pronounce that AEK or do you say Ek Athens?
I would say AEK, but I could be wrong.
Well, that's Pav when we get to indoor later.
That makes sense. Eric also did provide an explainer as to what AEK means, and I've forgotten other than that the K is Constantinople.
Constantinople. All right. Eric says, after rumours of joining Marcelo Bielsa at Leeds went silent in July, Ezequiel Ponce was acquired by Roma from Newell's Old Boys. Oh, who was acquired by Roma from Newell's Old Boys in 2015, accepted an offer to join AEK Athens on loan. He then scored in their season opener against PAS Giannina. AEK have now qualified in Group E of the Champions League group stage, so Ponce may soon find the chance to show that what he can do on the international stage. This will be Eric's last report on Ponce, as he has to focus more on his medical training, so he's offering up Ponce to anyone else who might be interested. Dabble at TotalSoccerShow.com if you would like to relieve Eric of his duties. Eric, I'm glad you've got your priorities right.
There we go. Yeah. Saving lives over writing scouting reports.
Yeah.
Still not sure which one's more important.
Scouting reports is a close second.
Okay, I'll take that. Andrew Eggleton scouting Ollie McBurney, 22-year-old Scottish striker at Swansea. Legs, I guess that's his nickname. Legs netted the winner for 10-man Swansea against Millwall. Swansea went down to 10 within 5 minutes, and Ollie's goal was in the 85th. So along with leading the attack and getting the winner, he had to fill in a bunch of unnatural positions and track back for most of the game. Millwall hadn't lost at home in 17 games before being undone by that 10-man Swansea team.
Will Herson is scouting Ryan Sessegnon, the 18-year-old English left winger for Fulham. Will says, after not doing much in losses against Palace and Spurs, Sess came off the bench and continued to not do much in Fulham's win against Burnley and draw at Brighton. Sess did get a full 90 during the League Cup win against Exeter City, but he was back in defence where he played the first half of last season, so I'm guessing left back. It appears the summer signings Andre Schürrle and Luciano Vietto are setting a high bar that Sess hasn't quite figured out how to jump over.
Yikes. But we give him...
It's okay, right? He's a teenager in the Premier League. He's got time to figure it out.
Yeah, plus he's young. He can probably jump high. He'll figure that part out. Carl Getz scouting Zach Clough, 23-year-old English forward on loan at Rochdale from Nottingham Forest. Nottingham Forest loaned Zach to League One side Rochdale until January. Clough will be looking to rebound from his disastrous 2018 season, in which he struggled to find goals and playing time both at Forest and on loan at Bolton.
Well, good luck to him.
Yeah.
DJ Ringus is scouting Levi Garcia, the 20-year-old Trinidadian winger for Kiryat Shimona FC. DJ says Levi Garcia started in Kiryat Shimona's first league game of the season and was subsequently called up for the Soccer Warriors friendly against UAE. That's Trinidad national team.
And I believe, for what it's worth, I believe Kiryat Shimona is in the Israeli Premier League.
There we go. Okay. However, he left the pitch due to injury in Kiryat Shimona's second game of the season and was forced to withdraw from national team duty. Overall, this is still a good sign that he's definitely seen as an important piece of the national team, despite what can be seen as a step down in his club career.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens. In the meantime, we'll talk about Benjamin Tondera and Mason Holgate, the 21-year-old English defender for Everton. Holgate started both the midweek Carabao Cup match and the weekend fixture against Huddersfield. Holgate and Kurt Zuma are the only fit centre backs right now, so that combination will get plenty of time until there are new developments. Holgate will likely be the first man off the bench once Michael Keane or Yerry Mina return to fitness.
Unless he really impresses in the meantime.
Could be.
He'd have to do a lot to get beyond Yerry Mina, though, right? Scott Little is scouting Nico Chiapacasa, the 19-year-old Uruguayan forward on loan at Rayo Majadahonda.
All right, I'm going to give you one more shot. I did text...
which one?
I did text Alexis Guerreros to ask him how to pronounce this club.
Okay.
So we're back to the live show. How did we pronounce it properly?
Did you get a response?
I do. I have the phonetic pronunciation.
Okay, so I'm going to go Rayo Mahadahonda.
You pretty much got it. Yeah, Mahadaunda is apparently or something approximating that.
I overpronounced that H.
But you adjusted the J between first and second time, so well done to you, my friend. That was a key one. That's a key one.
I learned from my mistakes.
There we go.
So the player's name again is Nico Chiapacasa. Scott says Nico was loaned from Atletico de Madrid to the newly promoted Rayo in the Spanish second division. Nico subbed on in their first match against Nastic de Tarragona shortly after Nastic had a player sent off and then scored the game's only goal in the 84th minute, thereby earning Rayo their first ever win in the Segunda Division. Wait, did Nico score the only goal? Yes, right? Otherwise it wouldn't be in the report. Yes.
You got it.
Nico scored the only goal in the 84th minute, earned Rayo their first ever win in the Segunda.
He sure did. We have a final report today that concerns Vinicius Jr. Yeah. Have you seen any news about Vinicius Jr. this week?
I saw, didn't someone bite him on the head?
You might have to read this. I might make you read this. Are you willing to read it? Do you mind?
I'll read it.
I feel like you'll read it more enthusiastically than I will because it's such an absurd report.
Pedro Lucas Ferreira is scouting Vinicius Jr., the 18-year-old Brazilian left midfielder for Real Madrid Castilla. Pedro says, Vini's second start of his Castilla campaign was full of smiles, high fives, thumbs up and bites. The mini Madrid derby against Atletico was a walk in the park for the young boy. Within the first 5 minutes, he burned the right back to get into open space, received the ball and slotted in the right-hand corner for his first goal. For his second, he received the ball at the corner of the box, created space with a drop of the shoulder, blasted his shot into the top corner of the goal. Constantly frustrating his defenders, Vini took his fouls, kept his cool, got up, did it all again.
No bias here.
Atletico is Pedro Real Madrid?
I'm assuming.
Atletico B had no answer, so they turned into cannibals. Late in the second half, famished Atletico centre-back Tachi took Vinicius Jr. down, and as the two tussled to get back up, Tachi held Vinicius down with his legs and bit the back of his head. The referee, who was standing 2 feet away, awarded both players a yellow card.
Yep. Not one part of that is an exaggeration, at least when it came to the biting incident. Yeah. That is really how it went down. And then Vinicius Jr., you always know someone has been bit. There is a specific face a person makes when they have been bit by another adult.
It's not a happy face.
And it's this sort of like, I'm in pain, but also, what are you doing? And like, we've seen it a few times. I saw it again with Vinicius Jr.
All right, thank you to everybody who sent in their scouting reports. If you'd like to join the Scouting Network, it's TotalSoccerShow.com/join. Taylor and I will not be back on Thursday because we're going to be here late working on Friday night. Watching the game is technically theoretically working hard watching the game.
It's working in a lumber yard, drilling for oil, and then watching soccer on a Friday night. Equally treacherous jobs.
But either way, we'll be here watching USA versus Brazil and recording afterwards Friday night. No new show on Thursday.
None.
Taylor Rockwell, thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
Right back at you, buddy. And listeners out there, don't bite nobody.
And thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you again on Friday.